Thank you for being with us this afternoon. That was a good round of introduction, so I'm going to dive right in because we've got some incredibly experienced and very talented designers and a commissioning editor here as well. So I'm going to begin with the process. Everyone looks at a book and they do judge a book by its cover, by its production. So much goes behind the final book and the end result. I'd love for the audience to know a little bit about the process. So Sunandini, would you like to tell us about yours, and then we can go around?
Turn this on. Is it on? I think one of the most important things that go into making a very effective or a very striking book cover, and I think that's not often talked about, is the amount of visual research that a designer has to do in order for the cover to properly, accurately reflect the content. We all talk about, the style of the narrative or the argument, the tone of the content, the subject matter. But in many, many cases, at least for the covers that I've had to do for Seagull, it's been about a time or a place, that's not very familiar to me. We do translations from languages across the globe. And it's not possible to have sort of visited, every place or every time. And so one has to spend a lot of time, reading about that location, looking up archival pictures of what, even if you say something as simple as the novel was in 1940s Calcutta, for example, and I live in Calcutta, but what did it look like in the 1940s? Even if I'm faking it, with a collage, but it still has to be an accurately representative collage. So I think that a great book cover often arises out of a great deal of research, reading about the time and the place and the people, and then translating that into a graphic that is striking.
Svein, what is your process?
Hello? It's okay? Yeah. Sorry. I think it always starts by reading the book. And I remember we had a discussion among the graphic designers in Norway some years ago, and where somebody meant that they didn't really have to read a book. But I think it's almost impossible to start doing that work seriously if you have not read the book. And of course, you can get a very good brief from the author and from the editor, but still, if you want to perform that task with a personal attitude, you have to read the book. You have to understand it. So I think that's the really main departure. But publishers will always try to negotiate prices for doing the book design, and then spending some hours reading the book is sometimes difficult. And also maybe the deadlines are tight, and then how can you spend a lot of time reading the book? So it's kind of a challenge to do that.
Thank you. Gunjan, maybe you could tell us, because you head the art department at Penguin Random House, and that obviously means, I don't know how many hundreds of books you publish.
300 in a year.
There you go. So you've published 300 books in a year. What happens once a designer has been identified for a book cover or for a book? They may or may not have time to read it, do the research. It would be interesting to know what happens next, because there are many stakeholders that actually come into play: the editor, the commissioning editor, the author, of course.
Sales, marketing.
Sales, marketing. So tell us a little bit about what happens at that stage.
So like Sunandini and Stein said, reading is of course critical, and we do push to read as much as possible. I have a thumb rule when I design. If it's fiction, I'll definitely read it, because to understand characters, settings, it's very, very important. Image research, of course, like Sunandini said, but also type research. If it's a book set in Calcutta, I need to be also textually accurate in terms of bringing that together, because a strong cover is a marriage of strength and clarity between image and the typography. So sometimes we tend to not give so much of importance to typography, but actually it's 50%. There are chances, of course, because we do large number of books, it's not possible to read every possible book. So our cover briefing process is fairly detailed. You get a detailed synopsis. If a designer feels it's not giving me enough ideas, you would ask for probably few chapters. But above all, what I personally encourage myself and my team is to have the conversations with the author, with the editors, because the written word can say so much, but at the end of the day, it's an author's body of work, and they have spent years and years doing it. So I definitely want to hear, do they have any expectations? Do they have any ideas how they want to position the book? Also involves sales and marketing. We have a very streamlined process of showing covers every week. We call it Jackets Meeting, where we have the whole of editorial, design, marketing, and sales, and you present and then you take feedback, good and bad side of it. And if you have read the book, the arguments will be more educated and more informed, and there will be less subjectivity, because you can argue back better.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those meetings, because I know how those go at Rowley. Philip, you work at Thames and Hudson. Thames and Hudson publishes some of the most beautifully designed books. What is the role of an editor, such as yourself, in the process of publishing an illustrated or an art book? If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Of course. Are you hearing me? Yes, good. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with creative people. Especially, I'm amused and happy to hear that, first of all, we discuss the cover, the design, and maybe even read the book. Whereas my job as commissioning editor is to try to find the author. Sometimes the author tries to find us. If I'm very lucky, it's a wonderful author. 80% of the time, we have to say, you found the wrong house, find another address. So this takes a lot of energy, in fact. But to find the right combination of author and subject means that there must be a reader out there. That's what drives it. I have to think, as a reader, what do I need? What have I not seen before? What is unique or definitive about this book? And then, as soon as I've found it and I've found the author, I contact my friendly designers and cover and sales and marketing people and say, you won't believe what I've found. And I get them into the conversation before even the top is off the pen. So when people are writing the book, it's as part of a relationship with the whole house.
Correct, yeah.
That's really interesting, actually, that it's so early on in the process, you've already had these internal discussions. And do they actually play a part in the way that the book is taking shape while the author is writing the book? Their inputs go in at that point, for example, the design team?
Yes, I mean, I have to take responsibility for the author and not give any crazy promises. And I must say, I believe in your book. I don't think it should be like this, I think it should be like that. And then I take this idea, if the author agrees, and I have the conversation with my colleagues, my design colleagues and publishing colleagues, and say, look, this really can work, and I have to be the internal advocate. I have to win the battles 2 or 3 years before we get to the bookshop. So it starts early, and everybody has to be involved, or else then I'm fighting a one-man battle against everyone. I can't do that.
Editors also play a very important role of being the diplomat between the many forces that
90% diplomat, 10% editor.
Exactly. What are some of the challenges that you find in designing books? We have 2 practitioners in India. I'm also talking about perhaps they're logistical challenges as well. I don't know, it could be like a paper that you're looking to print. But I would love to hear from you, Svein, as well, and Philip, when I talk about challenges it could be budgetary, whatever you feel in terms of book design, some of the challenges that you face. Should we begin with you, Svein?
Yeah. Yes, budgets are definitely a limiting factor, and so in Norway we don't have many printing houses, and they don't do all these creative things that you can do in some other countries, in India and in China. So you're kind of limited to the hard back cover, and then you choose different coatings and maybe some special effects. But and I think that often designers want to use the whole range of tools that's available. And then at the same time, I think that you don't really need that, because the strength in the cover can be in the solution within that limited frame. But money is always a topic.
Always, I agree. Sunandini, what about you?
For us, I think it's it's such, it's a limitation, but we've kind of turned that around a little bit, which is we don't have budgets for to sort of buy images, like even from the stock sites and so on. So everything that I do deals purely with images in the public domain, copyright-free, royalty-free images and so on. So sometimes that can be very, very hard because, you know what you want and it's kind of in your head, but you can't, we literally don't have the money to buy the image because then that burdens the book, further. So I've kind of turned that around, I hope, into some kind of a strength where, do or die, but we have to be able to come up with something that works from within that box. And the other thing is sort of slightly geographically limited, which is because we are in Calcutta and there's not necessarily enough publishers who are experimenting with many kinds of paper or, So we've bucked it a lot because we have a very supportive print and production person. But often there are things where, you're told, oh, this is available in Delhi. It's not required in bulk enough in Calcutta, so people are not asking for it. So sometimes we stumble against that. Yeah.
Gunjan, are budgets a problem at Penguin Random House?
I think they have already answered it for me.
They're a problem everywhere.
Yes, because in my view, books for which I need the budget have very bad P&Ls. So mostly literary fiction where you really need the budget because I feel design is such production is such an integral part of the design. It's like making a nice shirt, but you say, but we'll compromise on the fabric of it. But the design and the cuts go waste. It's exactly like with a book cover. So yes, I have to agree on that.
Philip, what about illustrated books? Because those are frightfully expensive to produce, so you also have to be careful about what you're commissioning, how many you're commissioning, how many are in the pipeline. But when it comes to design, where are the challenges in an illustrated book, especially based, for example, out of the UK?
As you say, Thames & Hudson is an illustrated publishing house. So all we do is make illustrated books, which cost more than 4 times more than other books because you're printing with 4 colors all the time. And all of the proofing and production that goes with it. But I almost turn my face or close my eyes when we talk about budgets. I'm the wrong person to talk to about budgets. So what I have to do is get the ideas out. Yes. Books are containers of ideas. And that can be in text, that can be in images. The best ones are in a combination. They're always defined by the reader. My duty is to find the reader who needs something that the reader hasn't yet had. And it needs to be the best possible form. Now that form must be made with a designer. It's a continuation of the same conversation. And there's no border post, there's no handover. It's all the same conversation.
I like the word that you use, Svein, calling it a solution, because actually design is a solution to a problem. And those solutions are best arrived together because at the end of the day, everyone wants the best for the book. You need it to be priced at a certain point so that it's not out of reach from your audience, but at the same time, you need to do justice to the author, the photographer, the artist's work. So it is a solution. What do you feel is a very underlooked aspect of book design? Gunjan, perhaps you'd like to start.
I think I'll go back to production value only. Because no matter how great the cover is and how well researched image typography is, but if it's not produced well, it won't make a mark.
Yeah. Sunandini?
I mean, definitely, with Gunjan on that, production values. And I think I find the idea, I've found it growing quite lopsided over the last, let's say, even 20 years or 10 years, which is that people think that book design is just the cover. Mm-hmm. And that's a very worrisome idea because the word is book design. So you're only going to look at the cover for that long. Hopefully you're going to read it. And the bulk of the book is, once you open the cover and you turn the pages. And I think the pages are not being given as much attention as they deserve. And I think that the first thing to go, when production quality suffers, one of the first things to be axed often is the amount of white space on the page. Don't need margins, don't need this, don't need that. Pack in as much as you can. And yeah, exactly. And I think that, that sort of saddens me and kind of depresses me because also the other thing we have to keep in mind, and that's the worrisome aspect, which is that the more you do that, the more the new generation sees pages produced like that, then that becomes the norm, right? And so, you know, you knock this off, you knock that off, you compromise, you have widows and orphans, etc., etc. And then other people come along and they look at that and think, oh, that must be all right, you know, because it's there in a book. We still believe in the book and the power of the printed word. So that worries me. I think that the rest of the book, you know, and especially when there are no pictures, you know, because even coffee table book design or picture book design is still paid attention to, but when it's just text, it's like, oh, just shove it all in and, you know, bring it out at the other end.
That's so true, because how many times do people actually pay attention that that folio number has been put there for a reason? It's not standard across every page, but no, I completely agree with you. Svein, what about you? What do you feel is a underlooked aspect of book design?
I think that maybe it comes back to money again, that when you get offers from printing houses, or if you specify a cheap paper, you could save a lot of money, but maybe that paper would turn yellow in a few years. Maybe it will not be durable. And I think that books should be possible to read and read and read over many years, and maybe given to children who give them to your grandchildren, and also that these materials are environmental friendly. But that's also, of course, always a matter of money.
Philip, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, it's easy to agree with Sunandini and Gunjan about the importance of production, and indeed, Svein, with the paper quality. Without it, my ideas will go up in smoke. It'll be a waste of time. It'll be an appalling tragedy. I think I can make a confession, a public confession, if I'm allowed, which is that if I commission a book, I want it to be on the best paper, printed at the best possible color press. I want the text design to be preferably with a homemade special font. I mean, you know, let's dream these things. And when it happens, then it's my responsibility to push it. If I can make people believe in it, then readers should believe in it too. So I believe in pushing along from the best, should be possible.
It would have been interesting to have some people from production and marketing on this panel to hear their points of view about. Just to add to that, only because I think book design has to be one of my greatest loves. You know, I have bought so many books just because of a paper or the edge, the gilded edge, and just a lot of it is also just research. But one area which I find is often overlooked is the spine, right? Because we forget that that's actually the first way that people are going to, not we forget, but often we forget. So whenever we do book covers or even an illustrated book, that's we'll sort of print that and see what colors pop out, what fonts and so on. So there's a lot a lot of details that go in.
Can I put in a shout for end papers?
End papers,
Please.
Yes, exactly.
So end papers are almost my favorite part. It's the first thing that happens when you turn the cover.
First
if I
impressions.
can manage to put a map there, or an illustration, or something which is specially commissioned, that's what I want for my end paper. That's before we even start.
Absolutely, agreed. I asked you all to choose a few examples of good design, because after all, we should be able to show what we feel is good design. So I'm going to actually ask them to pull that up, and we'll start with you, Sunandini. Let's go down the book cover you've chosen, and we'll keep it
I'm very short. I actually want to just focus on the series on the Northeast from Zuban. You'll know them when you see them. If you start your clicking magic. Is something happening?
Yeah, I think he's...
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see?
Yes, I can.
Sorry.
So, but because time is short, I'll only talk about that particular series.
No, you can, but I'm just wondering why it's moving ahead. I'm not really... Should we... Are these one... Is this one?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with this.
Just, this was a selection that was made very, very rapidly because we were running out of time to submit them. Oh, it's a different one? Which one is it? Yeah, that's fine. But I actually want to talk about the series that I chosen from Zuban. So is it working? Is it, Priya, if you click, does it proceed? No, not this one. Were you responsible? No, not yet. This one. Okay. Yeah. And there's a few after, which are the sort of similar...
Just tell me when you want me to...
Yeah, you can. This one and the next. Oh, go a little slowly. Yeah, this. No, that's fine. So it's a beautiful, beautiful series that's been published by Zuban. and the designer is, I think, Nori Norbu. And I think that, they just work very, very beautifully. It's very hard to make a series look varied, and yet similar and yet identifiable. It's a beautifully illustrated version. I think the text is very prettily integrated. If you look at it up close, you can see there are bits where the illustration actually goes onto the lettering. Very, very cleverly done. It kind of rationalizes the idea that this will be seen as in the algorithm as a thumbnail. So the typography is large, and yet, when you pick it up, the detailing in the illustration is really quite incredible. The color schemes, again, that peach is traveling, that aquamarine is traveling, the blue is traveling, and yet there's bits of difference. So this has just remained one of my very favorite series. And I was just talking about it to Urvashi, and the last one's out on Assam. I think it's just about been published or being printed as we speak, and this has just remained in that beautiful marriage that Gunjan mentioned, and we all struggle with, which is that a book cover is half text and half image. And you may read it together, but one is not complete without the other, and I think this just bridges that very prettily.
No, it's beautiful. Is the illustrator the series
Yes,
art director as well? Because
totally.
She's done that. That's lovely. Can we move on to the next, which is Gunjan's, please.
Right. So for me, the cover has to, in the first glance, has to hold your attention before you read or decode the image. But whatever it is, a visual together has to hold your attention. And I think this is John Gray's latest novel's cover, and it's produced in Pantone shades. I have seen the original copies, and it's just stunning how he turned the historical context of the novel and put it in such a modern way. What did I say?
Which one are you saying?
The Fraud.
Okay. Yeah, the fraud.
The Fraud, yeah. And the next one is, it does the same thing for me. It just holds my attention. This is The Woman Destroyed by Peter Mendelssohn. And the color. Yeah. No, I'm saying the designer is Peter Mendelssohn.
Peter Mendelssohn is a designer. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Gunjan, you'll have to give context.
John Gray,
yes,
and that's what they. I'm sorry.
I think
about
you'll have
that.
to give some context to
Sorry,
all of
I'm
us.
sorry.
Please.
I should know I'm not talking to only designers. Sorry about that. So I think the strength and the clarity in visual and text coming together, making that one cohesive visual that will at first hold your attention, be it in physical presence or online, is good for me.
Thank you. Can we have Svein's, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I chose this because we were also asked to suggest some books that meant something for us in our career. And actually this book is quite old. It's from the 60s, and it was given to me for my first birthday. And it's the Norwegian Viking saga, or the sagas of the Viking kings. And I noticed as a toddler that this was precious, probably because my parents said, no, you can't read that, because I would probably tear out the pages or draw in it. But it's bound in red leather. It has this magic gold foil, and it's very old-fashioned today, but it's a classic. And it's very tangible. It has this magic physical quality that you immediately notice. It's something precious, and I think that it's very well done. And with the illustrations are from the 19th century, and it's a classic. It still works today, even
and
if
we can
our
still
modern
feel this looking at the screen.
our modern visual language is totally different, but so it's very good. I think maybe there's another image also from the inside, and yeah. So this is all made with the old tools and reprographic cameras and type. I mean, it's the old-fashioned way, but it's.
I love that you chose that. Your first birthday gift.
Yeah,
It
and,
stayed with you. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, and it's like this benchmark for what you can do with the beauty of a book. Yeah, and this is a postcard book made by Danish-American artist Henrik Drescher, and I chose it because it's playing on what is really a book. And if we flick through a few of the images, could you change? It has envelopes inside, and the content, the stories, is about, can you send postcards to dead people? And the book is like a proof, yes, you can, because you get things back. And it's all a bit quirky and crazy, but it's super nice. And in the end, there's a big map you can fold out, and it plays on all these super expensive tactile, physical qualities you can add to a book. And this is a monography by Stefan Sagmeister, Austrian, New York-based graphic designer. And I chose it because it's both a yes and no. And normally I would not enjoy a red plastic cover, but here it has a function. When you pull out the book, you will see another image, because it has some of the image is blocked by the red foil. And if you change, and it has this, it starts with this over several spreads, this superlying line, which is like from the beginning of the creation of Earth until modern graphic design started, which is totally at the very end. So he kind of puts that monography into the whole history of the universe. It has both very kind of classical presentations of his work, but then you can see on the edges there are, could you go back please? You can see that it has this print that shows when you fold out the pages. There's some bones and stuff being visible. And also on the next, and when you on the back you have the text about the book, and when you again pull out the book from the cover, you see when the red cover is on, you can see the nice things people say about his work. When you pull it out, you can see all the critique when people hate him. So it's very playful, and then sometimes designers add effects like foil and embossing, and it's only effect. It's kind of empty, but here it's a totality that perfectly works and makes you want to do this over and over again because it's fun.
Thank you. And Phillips, please. Thank you.
It's fine. It certainly makes me want to look at the real book, actually. I want to play with it. So I've chosen a couple of jackets for books that I've been involved with. I've picked this one because we know, I should say in Gunjan's way, I should say thank you to Daniele, the designer, Italian, now going to Penguin Random House, I'm sorry to say. I'm glad for you. So a very good designer has made a book cover, a jacket, for this book on Francis Bacon. Now, Francis Bacon we know is an artist, as a painter. So why have we chosen a photograph of him on the front? Well, this is a book of his letters. It's a book of his writings. So we're trying to retune. We're thinking of readers who may or may not know Francis Bacon as a painter, but we want them to identify with him as a writer as well. So we have some of his handwriting, which goes across this very penetrating photograph, and it's a letter written to Lucian Freud. Of course, we can't really read it because it's obscured in the form of the jacket, but when we turn inside, the letter is there. So this is a sort of temptation to open the book and to discover a side of Francis Bacon that we didn't really know existed, or if we did know, we want to find out more. So that's that one. This book was published 6 months ago. It was an idea that came from an author of mine who spotted, in fact, that there was no book on Islamic architecture as a general survey across the world. And he said Islamic architecture exists across the world because Muslims exist across the world. This is the great community. So I agreed with him, of course, and we collaborated very closely with the designer and with the picture researcher on this. I insisted that this book is not a book just of architecture, but it involves people. So who is on the front? It's somebody who's just looking through the doors of a great mosque. This is us. We are the observers. We're about to open the book. We're about to look inside. So this is how we insisted to put a person on the front. The last one, this is the wild card entry, if you like. This is the jacket design that should never have got through at all, and it's, of course, my favorite. This is by a photographer, a Swiss photographer called Daniel Schwartz, as he calls himself sometimes in Anglophone world. He has written his life's work, in a way, putting together photographs from across his career. How do you put a single photograph from across your career on a book? It's somehow impossible. He said, no, it's not impossible. I'm talking about photography and thought. This is the subtitle of the whole book, Tracings, Photography and Thought. He took a photograph from the deck of a ship where he saw this extraordinary light effect that seemed to divide the clouds left and right, dark and light. And he thought to himself, that's my cover. We put it on the front with the words photography and thought. You're starting to think, there are two parts of my brain, of my mind, but it's the one sky. Everything I'm looking at, it's part of a whole. It's a very beautiful and inspiring and rather difficult, not to say enigmatic image. But doesn't that make you want to know more? It did me, so I went with that.
Lovely, thank you. It is beautiful, very evocative. It makes you want to open the book and see what else is in there. I'm going to actually ask, I'm going to end with a rapid fire round, because I thought that might be fun, and then open it up. But I do have a question, especially when, as all of you are commissioning designers, or you're teaching or hiring designers to join your team. What do you look for in a young designer who you're giving an opportunity to either freelance or to join your team? Svein, would you like to start with that?
I'm not necessarily looking for that particular style. I'm looking for people who have proved that they will go all the way, that they are ambitious, that they want to do it, something that's remarkable. Because you can always brief a designer to do this or that, and if they have the professional attitude, if they have the ambitions, they will produce good work.
Thank you. Sunandini?
I'm looking for somebody who reads and enjoys it. I'm looking for someone with empathy. I'm looking for someone who's very open-minded, because you may be given a book to design that you don't like, or you don't vibe with, or it's not your kind of book, and I don't care, frankly. You know, I just want you to be able to deliver. So I want both the empathy, you know, the connect, and sometimes even the disconnect. But that professional attitude that says that I will still do my best, you know, by the content, and just is open to both receiving and to giving. Receiving instructions, receiving a brief, receiving the deadline. Sometimes ideas are clear. Yeah, sometimes ideas are not clear, you know. And also someone who's, you know, just brave enough to occasionally say that, I know you said this and I followed your instructions, but then I've done this as well because I felt so strongly about it, you know. So, yeah.
Gunjan?
So design is iterative process, and like Sunandini said, she said everything that I wanted to say anyway. So, so yeah, pretty much the same thing, that someone who can take feedback because of the kind of work that we do. It's not I have done this and take it or leave it. So there will be feedback, and we work with stakeholders, so feedback. But over the time, negotiations, how do you negotiate by not disrupting any stakeholder and can objectively argue back? Is something which is very critical, you know, and at every level, designer level, senior designer, manager level, art director.
And that comes back to being well informed, read the book,
absolutely,
have an opinion about it.
Absolutely.
Philip, what about you?
I think the answer is exactly as you've all said, is a team player, effectively, someone who must collaborate and must not be the solo singer. We don't need any lead singers in this job. It's a chorus, and we need all to be thinking along the same lines, and the designer we need to fall in with the designer needs to fall in with us. So we look for the personality who we know that's going to work.
Okay, quick round of questions, and then we're going to open it up. I'm going to start with you, Philip. Favorite font?
Oh dear.
The one that's yet to be invented. Is that is that unfair?
Is that all of you? Because all of you said yes. Gunjan, you must have a
Change.
favorite font.
Well, at the gunpoint, if I have to say, it's Garamond.
Okay.
Baskerville.
Mrs. Eves.
Oh, I like that too. We did a
Yeah.
whole book in that. A book cover you wish you'd commissioned. Sorry, a book you wish you'd commissioned.
I know, that's a tough one.
A book cover you wish you designed? This is not as rapid as I'd hoped.
I think a lot of what Peter Mendelsohn does for New Directions.
Okay.
I'm a great fan, and sometimes, in fact, when I'm stuck, I go and kind of just, gape in wonder and then come away feeling terribly inferior. Yeah.
If you were not a commissioning editor, Philip, what would you be doing? What would you wish to have
I'd be a
done?
writer.
Ah, interesting. Gunjan? If you were not a book designer?
If I'm not a book
If
designer,
you were not a book designer. what would-
definitely an interior designer.
Okay. Sunandini?
I'd be dead.
Shrine?
Well, as mentioned, I did used to work as an illustrator, and I would happily go back to that, but maybe that's almost the same. But I could also enjoy being a chef, because I think that creating illustrations and art or design and creating flavors together, it's not too
Very similar.
different.
Yeah, wonderful. Last question. What are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading Sleepless by Marie Darrieussecq. It's published by Fitzcarraldo, a great house with very bold decisions, tiny team, and I think they're up to 4 Nobel Prize
Nobel
winners.
Prize.
So I'm going with them.
Wonderful. Gunjan?
I have a problem with this question because you have read books as manuscripts and they kill the art of reading.
I know, totally. Yeah,
But
yeah,
if I have to ask it, I'm reading Loot by Tanya James right now as a book.
Okay, nice.
I'm reading Pulp Fiction all the time in my spare time.
Mhm.
So I've just rediscovered, to my joy, that HarperCollins has reprinted all the Alistair MacLeans. So I'm reading Goodbye California, which I hadn't read before.
Lovely.
I'm reading a book by the Italian scientist Carlo Rovelli. He's trying to explain to ordinary people how the universe is constructed and works. And this book is particularly about time, which I find super interesting because apparently our human knowledge about time and the universe is as banal and primitive as if we were all flat earthers.
Well, I need to get this book. Yes, definitely. Thank you. And I'm going to open it up because I've been told we have less than 10 minutes to the audience. Any questions?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm just wondering that can a good book outdo a bad cover? Are there examples of that?
Good book outdo a bad cover. Good. Gunjan?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if it's a good book, a good text, good reviews, it becomes known, and people will not care about the cover. And I think that maybe we are among the most boring panels because we agree on everything. But I think, unfortunately, maybe many readers don't really care. So it still is the content the most important. But I think that we should never underestimate the value and importance of the cover, because it's that makes people pick up the book in the bookshop.
And other way around as well.
And I also noticed when I used to do book hours that if a book sold well, it would be the author would get the honor. If a book sold bad, then the designer would be to blame.
Thank you.
but doesn't that prove that
The other way around.
cover is important?
Sorry, there was another question in the front.
Thank you so much. It's been a very enlightening session, first of all. So I was thinking about this experience that I might come across a new book when I am going through an Instagram story somewhere on social media. Don't you think this role of book designer is a bit reductive given the current sort of media landscape that we live in? And what could be an experienced designer for books going ahead? I clear with the question? Should I?
No,
kind of-
I'm just confused about the question, but are you trying to say that because of the growing role of social media, we don't need to design books any longer? Or?
I'll say it again. Isn't the role of just book designer
Yeah.
reductive to where all we experience or come across the art in that sense that
Yeah,
wouldn't we
I
grow?
think no, because I think Bookstagram is still about books, right? So I think that if anything, in my experience, given how much the visual has taken over, you know, like the world is in your phone, right? And I think that book design is even more important if books need to continue to be relevant. We have to up our game. You know, we can't turn tail and run. Books have to become the most beautiful, striking objects you can hold in your hand and put your phone down, right? So I think it's even more important, right? That they have to become sharp, edgy, clean, user-friendly, readable, stylish, sophisticated, everything they've been through time in their own way, right?
I published a book from Instagram. There we were in lockdown, and I was scrolling and found this fantastic Instagram account holder. I contacted him. We made a book. It's on its third reprint. I think that should speak for itself. If it doesn't, I think that when we consume images this big and this big and this big, we are consuming images. It's the same. And we therefore still need designers to guide us and show us and help us to explore.
And also to add the linearity, because on digital you'll just go scroll. But what Sunandini does, or say Thames and Hudson, it's like a little museum in itself. So end papers we talked about, finishes we talked about, the printed ink and the paper and the gilded edges, and the beauty in the typography, the white spaces, you'll all miss there.
There's some questions at the end because we have 5 minutes.
Hello. Hi. So, as I feel like all of us have seen this question coming from miles away, the use of AI today, as in the publishing industry, how do we deal with that? Who is actually suffering? Illustrators, artists, maybe even like designers as such. Maybe like in the future, people will just go to a website, be like, there is actually a website, I need a book cover. And it will just generate it for you with all the typography, everything. You can just be like, okay, change this font. So do you think our roles are under threat? Basically.
We're all having an existential crisis, aren't we? It's a very, very tricky and gray area. But I think that there is a lot to be still said for individual intelligences that come with their own, backdrop, background, whimsy. You can't feed 3 words into me and I won't spit out a cover. That's basically where AI is right now, right? It's prompt-based. I'm not. I have a lifetime of my own prompts, which are completely different from Gunjan's, which are completely different from, everybody else on this panel. And that's what is making us unique. That's what's making our book covers unique. If you put 5 human people together in a room and give them a book, they'll come up with 5 different covers, right? And I think that there was a lot of angst in a very similar way in the publishing industry when the whole idea of self-publishing started. That, why do you need an editor at all? Why do you need a publishing house? You have a manuscript, you're confident, get it there, someone will edit it for you or not. You can choose, your package. And so I think that, there are some people for whom it will be very empowering. Like if you want to have a book out there and you don't know how to talk to a book cover designer, you don't have a budget for a book cover designer, why not? You want to self-publish, DIY, help yourself. But I think in the long term, there will be a value will emerge on the humanness of the human beings, so to speak, and that there is no substitute for experience, for taste, for the value that an experienced editor brings to it, an experienced cover designer brings to it. So I think it'll coexist, and you can use whichever option you want. It's like being able to read on a Kindle, being able to read on your phone, or to be able to read the book. I think they'll all kind of be around.
Would any of you like to add to that?
Only to say, sorry, just quickly, I'm as thrilled and as bored by AI as I think we all are. Is that fair? I believe, therefore, there are other people like me. I would like to publish for them, and I think that probably I would prefer an author to do it than an AI machine.
And I also believe in the individual strength that we all have, and maybe we should allow ourselves to be more individual, more personal, in a way that AI maybe will not be. But I think that the one group of professionals that will suffer the most are the translators, because these tools are becoming so powerful. And now, let's say you have one translator that has translated most of the works by Henrik Ibsen to Bengali. Maybe he dies. Then you can brief AI to translate with his language. I mean, it's so powerful. And this will, of course, be extremely cheap for the publishers. And I don't think the translators can keep on demanding their right to do that work. But what we've seen in Norway is that some authors, they demand in the contracts with the agents, we don't want AI translators, we want real translators. But I think that there's a battle that will happen within that profession.
That's very interesting about contracts, already reflecting. Are we out of time, or can we take another question? Out of time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.